Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us here on KXAN Live. We go live now to the Texas state capitol, where a bipartisan group of lawmakers is holding a news conference. They are calling for clemency in a case involving Melissa Lucio, who is scheduled to be executed next month on April 27th. Related to the death of her 2-year-old daughter. What has happened is that her attorneys filed an application for clemency this week, saying that there is new evidence showing that the daughter's death was accidental and not murder. Let's listen in as they begin the news conference at the Texas State Capitol.
In here that the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court, ruled this morning in the Ramirez case. I believe it was an 8-1 holding that guarantees a death row inmate's First Amendment rights and religious liberties, even up to the very second of execution in the death chamber. As you know, this case involved whether a clergy member can be present in the execution chamber, whether they can, in some instances, place a hand on the foot of or on the leg of a death row inmate at their time of execution. And it's my understanding this morning, again, after having not read the opinion, that the Supreme Court ruled 8-1 to defend the religious liberties of Texans. And so the Melissa Lucio case is especially timely, and I and my wonderful colleagues behind me are grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you and the people of Texas about her case. I want to thank Representative Moody, of course, the Dean of the Texas House, Representative Thompson, Representative Anchia, Representative White, and Representative Hull for standing behind me and with me today. It's my honor to stand shoulder to shoulder with them to talk about this case. Later today, the 6 of us, in conjunction with currently over 75 of our House members, I believe the last count was 81 Texas state representatives from all parts of this state, all political persuasions, Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, death penalty opponents and death penalty proponents, who have signed on to a letter that we'll be sending later today, probably this evening, to the Board of Pardons and Paroles, asking for Melissa Lucio's sentence to be commuted, or at the very least to grant a stay of execution and a reprieve. What you're going to hear from my colleagues today is a succinct but detailed and very important outline of the problems that we see and that we believe that you will see, the problems that we believe are clearly evident with Melissa Lucio's case. We, as a conservative Republican myself, who has long been a supporter of the death penalty in the most heinous cases, I have never seen a more troubling case than the case of Melissa Lucio. And the 6 of us, in conjunction with our House colleagues, and hopefully many more who will join later today and in the days ahead, are asking for the Board of Pardons and Paroles to spare her life and to delay her execution, which is currently scheduled in about a month on April 27th. And so, like I said, I want to thank my colleagues today for the work that they've put into this, for the work that they will put into this in the coming days as we advocate on behalf of Melissa and her family. Let's not lose sight of today and in the days ahead of Mariah Lucio. It's important for us to remember that a 2-year-old Texan lost her life. The facts of how she did are still in grave dispute, but there's no question that we lost a fellow Texan, that the Lucio family lost a daughter and a sister and a granddaughter, and we don't want to lose sight of that. Some people would argue that us even having a conversation about the death penalty and us asking for a stay of execution or a commutation in some way weakens our system of criminal justice, and in some way delays or prohibits justice for Mariah. I would argue the exact opposite of that. When we do everything that we can to ensure that an innocent Texan is not put to death by the state, or even a potentially innocent Texan is not put to death by the state, when we ensure that, when we push the pause button, we are strengthening our criminal justice system, and we are ensuring justice for Mariah and for the Lucio family. The system literally failed Melissa Lucio at every single turn. And I am going to do everything that I possibly can in the coming days, in every way possible, legal, constitutional, and maybe in some ways that we haven't thought of yet, to delay and to prevent Ms. Lucio's execution, because I believe that is what is the best interest of all Texans in our system of criminal justice. So with that, I want to thank you again for being here today and call on my colleague, Representative Moody.
Thank you, Chairman Leach. I appreciate your leadership on this, and I think it is very fitting that we had that decision come down this morning because it crystallizes the importance of faith, and that's something that I want to start. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the faith of Melissa Lucio, but I want to talk about the reason that I think you see 81 plus signatures on a letter and growing that'll go to the Board of Pardons and Paroles. Something that when Dean Thompson comes to speak to you, I think she can speak to the unique nature of that, of this groundswell of support. Something that, at least in my time, I've never seen, and I think it crystallizes how important this case is, not just to our criminal justice system, but to our notions of justice and mercy. Because the core principle in the driving force that I've always worked on in my time building the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus was finding that balance of justice and mercy. As a practicing Catholic, I know how powerful a turn to faith can be. And whoever Melissa was when she entered our system, her devotion and ministry make it clear that she's now a different person who has earned a measure of grace. Melissa found faith while she was incarcerated. She converted to Catholicism. Melissa attends Mass weekly. She reads the Bible daily. She reads with other inmates. And they report that they can frequently hear her praying in her cell. She meets individually with clergy on both Thursdays and Sundays. In 2015, she started a Bible study group with other inmates that she leads to this very day. It has been so successful that even non-Catholics have begun to attend. And the prison warden himself participates along with her. Melissa is living proof of the transformative power of faith. And as a state that professes a foundation in God, we should reconsider the wisdom of seeking a punishment that exceeds God's own. It is not lost on me that we are in the Lent season. And when we close out with Easter, we will learn the story of the penitent thief. And Melissa's case brings that story to my mind and to my heart. The Catholic Conference of Bishops opposes Melissa's execution, and Jennifer Alman is here representing them today. They've requested clemency on her behalf, saying that one tragedy is not somehow made better by killing someone else. Justice is not suddenly restored because another person dies. Executing Melissa will not bring peace to her surviving children. It will only bring more pain and suffering. And that this case shows that the death penalty process in Texas cannot be trusted to provide justice to all of us. We know that it is deeply flawed and rife with human error and inconsistency. I know that faith drives people to take a lot of actions on the floor behind us. And I know it's driving a lot of people to join this effort today. And I also know it's what is keeping Melissa and her family strong right now. I'd like to turn it over now to Dean Thompson.
I want to say good morning. And I want to talk to you about the unreliability of confession. When this happened, Melissa was pregnant with twins, and she was questioned for more than 5 hours in the middle of the night, just 2 hours after Mariah's death. Melissa is a person we learned with low IQ who suffers from PTSD and depression owing to a lifetime of domestic abuse and trauma. Factors that numerous studies have confirmed makes her especially vulnerable to coercion and accepting blame for a crime she didn't commit. The techniques used to secure her statement, known as the Reed technique of maximization and minimization, have been shown to wear down subjects into false confessions. In this case, Melissa denied having done this 80 times over the course of interrogation before finally simply agreeing with the interrogators, who were saying instead of supplying her own account of what happened. False confession, like Melissa, are a primary cause of wrongful conviction and play a role in nearly 1/3 of all of the cases in which a defendant is later exonerated. As Governor George W. Bush stated when he commuted the sentence against Henry Lee Lucas in the face of grave doubt about his guilt, the state of Texas has an obligation to make sure that it never executes a person for a crime that they may not have committed.
Good morning. My name is Rafael Lanchia. I'm the chair of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, and today I want to talk a little bit about family and call upon the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles to prevent a grave miscarriage of justice. Texas law requires the Board of Pardons and Paroles to consider victim impact statements, which in this case weigh heavily in favor of clemency for Melissa Lucio. All of Mariah's brothers and sisters have directly asked the board to spare Melissa's life, saying that it would amount to, quote, fresh pain, anguish, and grief for the entire family. And Mariah's oldest brother, John Lucio, has written that taking Melissa's life will not give him any sense of closure or any sense of justice for the death of his sister, but rather Melissa's execution would be like making his family's wounds unhealable. These are the same sorts of considerations that recently led to clemency in the case of Thomas Whitaker, where guilt was not an issue or in question, and instead clemency must be granted here as well, where guilt is very much in question. And I would just add, as others have alluded to, that the criminal justice system, ladies and gentlemen, is a human system. And by definition, it is a fallible system. And as a co-equal branch of government, we stand here as legislators to talk to the executive, to talk to the legislative, to talk to the judicial, and ensure that justice is done. It is our job, it is our role, it is our calling. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman Leach, and thank all of y'all for being here. And I want to thank you said 81 members that have signed on and have looked at this in a very thoughtful way. And we know that there's some more that are coming on board, and we want to thank them for that. Look, anything in the justice system, especially when we're dealing with the death penalty, it should be constitutionally sound. It should be justly considered and rightfully determined. And in this particular situation, we just see some troubling things. And this is why we're asking the board at the appropriate time when this gets before them, and if it gets before them, to look at this and make a rightful decision. And, you know, our Constitution reserves our constitutional right to counsel, and it needs to be competent counsel, not just counsel in name. And unfortunately, in this situation, we're finding that the attorneys that were involved in this case were not very qualified, okay? And that's not good, especially when your life is on the line. For example, they chose, the legal team, not the jury, not the judge, not anybody on the outside. They made the decision to move to trial without having all of the specialists and experts weigh in that probably would have added some context to this situation. For some reason, the attorneys did not call the other children as witnesses that could have attested to any record of abuse or gross neglect. And think about this, a 3-judge panel from the Fifth Circuit concluded that Ms. Lucio was denied a fair trial. But after consideration of the full court, they decided not to order a new trial because they wanted to have deference to the state. And so with that, I'm going to end with this. I like the idea of deference to the state. But if we're going to have deference to the state, that means that we have to step up and look at these situations and do the right thing. I think, Mr. Chairman, you stated that the system, the justice system, failed Ms. Lucio. But we want to make sure that it doesn't fail the victim, the real victim in this case, and that's baby Mariah. Victims matter. And for victims to matter, truth has to matter. But hopefully, not hopefully, but, my time in this House is coming to the end by the end of this year. And hopefully after this, Chairman Thompson, we'll get the right people around the table and kind of not have all these episodic inflection points, okay, when we're rushing to get something fixed, all right? And so a lot of systems failed, Ms. Lucio. The family system, maybe the education system, possibly the CPS system, and now we're looking at the judicial system. So I would just hope on this day that we all take a deep breath, and I have confidence that we're going to get the rightful decision, one way or the other. But I would hope that on this day that we all move forward with introspection and look at what we're doing so we kind of mitigate these situations where we have to rush the media in to do a press conference. We have to do all of this, that all of our work is done appropriately and in a rightful, justful, and constitutional manner. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Lacey Hull, Republican from Houston. I'm proud to be here today with my colleagues, and I'm eager to join them and many more colleagues who couldn't be here today in fighting for the life of Melissa Lucio. As you've heard from my House colleagues this morning, both Republicans and Democrats, this case is especially troublesome. Maybe the most questionable and concerning death penalty case Texas has seen in quite some time. As policymakers, we have an obligation to stand up and speak out, especially those who consider ourselves to be pro-life, pro-woman, and pro-law and order. And that's exactly what we're doing today. As you've heard today, as awful as precious little Mariah's death was and is, and as much as we all want justice for Mariah, the facts simply do not support any conclusion that Ms. Lucio committed capital murder and is deserving of the ultimate punishment by the state of Texas. In addition to what my colleagues have outlined for you this morning, much of which is contained in our joint letter, the process failed Melissa every step of the way. CPS had been involved with the family repeatedly after Melissa suffered violence at the hands of her husband. A simple review of the CPS records in this case strongly suggests that Melissa, albeit imperfect, was actually a loving, protective, and nurturing mother. Her own children, all of them, talk about how much their mom loved them, how she never harmed any of them. And yet, because of the purely political decision of the prosecutor in this case, former Cameron County District Attorney Armando Villalobos, a prosecutor who is now serving a federal sentence for extortion and bribery, most of Melissa's children ended up not with a mother who loved them, but needlessly in the state's custody as part of our foster care system. While it may be politically devastating to have an ad saying Armando Villalobos is against our children, it is incumbent upon elected officials to stand up for justice no matter the circumstance. Melissa did not receive justice in court. The trial judge did not allow in critical evidence, including experts retained by the defense. As a result, 4 of the jurors who convicted Melissa have since given statements urging the governor and the Board of Pardons and Paroles to grant Melissa clemency. The disparity between Melissa's sentence and her husband's is unconscionable. He received a mere 4-year sentence for failing to take Mariah to the doctor despite a history of assaultive offenses. If this doesn't make the Board of Pardons and Paroles pause to stop this execution next month, then I'm not sure what will or should. In closing, the bottom line is this: we policymakers have an obligation and an opportunity to speak out when there is injustice. And here, in the case of Melissa Lucio, there's clear injustice. But the good news is that we still have a chance to prevent her execution. And that's what we're doing here today. On behalf of those state representatives gathered with me today, and many more like us who have signed on to our letter, we simply ask for the Board of Pardons and Paroles, and really all Texans, to dig deep, to ask the tough questions, and to seek out the full truth before an irreversible decision impacting not only the Lucio family, but our entire system of criminal justice is made next month. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank my colleagues for joining me here today, and for those that have signed on. It is easy to dismiss people like Melissa Lucio. In fact, the system is set up for us to forget her and treat her like less than human. That's the way. That is the way that our justice system has been set up, and for years in this body, it is easy to ignore issues that touch the justice system because we think of those people as less than human, and we throw them away. But no more. We cannot be guided like that. We must see the humanity in every single person. This group that started in frustration for not getting policy across on criminal justice reform, born out of frustration, is now proudly bringing the Texas House to the table on these issues, day in and day out. There are only two other things that we've publicly taken a stand on. And that was the case of Bobby Moore and Rodney Reed, and now Melissa Lucio. And I'm proud to say that I've never seen the type of support and investment that people are making in this body to those people who in the past were treated as less than human. I hope this is a moment that we are turning the tide in Texas for a fairer system, for a more just system. I want to thank you all for joining us, and I certainly want to open the floor for any questions of the group. If you want, we can do individual as well. Yep.
My name is Hayden Sparks. I'm with the Texan. This case has been working its way through the system for a number of years. What does that say about our system, and what legislative changes are you hoping for, especially the Republicans on the panel, in the next regular legislative session in response to this case?
You want to answer for the Republicans?
Yeah.
I'm happy to. Yeah. I'll take a stab at that, but I certainly want to defer to. I'll defer to my colleagues, Chairman White and Representative Hull, as well, if they want to answer. But two points. On each of these cases, on every single death penalty case that is scheduled for execution, I believe it's incumbent upon every single policymaker here at the Capitol, the People's House, all 150 state representatives, all 31 senators, and our statewide officials to ask the tough questions, to dig deeply, and to fulfill our constitutional oaths of office and our responsibilities to ensure that the constitutional liberties, among them, chief among them, the right to life, is protected. We talk a lot in this building, rightfully so, about protecting innocent life. And I believe that's from the womb to the tomb. And so my message to my fellow Republican colleagues specifically is to not bury your head in the sand on these issues. Typically, Republicans have been reticent or reluctant to talk about the death penalty, to question the integrity of the death penalty. And I think that's the wrong approach. I know it's the wrong approach. So I encourage legislators to ask the tough questions, to review the documents, the transcripts, the case file, to call us, to call Melissa's attorneys, and to figure out where you are on this case, one way or another. And two, and this is my second point, is once you understand, like we have, that there are problems, that there are questions, any number of which you heard today standing alone would be enough for a pause, but put together is, I believe, compelling us to pause and to say, hold on, just wait before we move forward with an irreversible decision. I would encourage those members to think deeply about what reforms, Hayden, are needed going forward. This caucus is open to any and all reforms which will ensure the integrity and the strength of our criminal justice system. It will ensure beyond a shadow of a doubt that no innocent Texan is ever put to death by the state. And we need to make sure that the system, from the initial investigation, through the interrogation, through the trial, through the appellate process, and yes, including clemency petitions through the Board of Pardons and Paroles, that any and all reforms are on the table to make sure and preserve the integrity of our system. Sorry, go ahead.
Just on my piece, Hayden, and I think I've worked on this and discussed this with other members in the past, issue on counsel. You know, it would be good for us to have an institution or a process where we nurture a core of attorneys that we know have the requisite skill set and experience in dealing with these cases. Okay? You know, the idea of someone that is a civil litigator, and look, I'm not any type of litigator, okay? I try to run away from litigators, okay? And to sit in the first chair is quite a delta, okay? And making sure that people get competent counsel. So it's just not counsel in name. No, you had an attorney, okay? It's not just like saying, oh, you got a representative, you know, call them. Okay, this is a situation where your life is possibly going to be extinguished. And, you know, for me personally, if it's constitutionally sound, rightly and justly decided, with that jury, you know, it is what it is. But real quickly, let me say this, Hayden. It's important that we get this right as members and people in the judicial system, because those of us that have served on the House Committee on Corrections or in the criminal justice policy committees, you actually go and you watch and observe the execution process. Okay? And the idea is that when all these decisions are made and all these speeches and articles are done, we have great people in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice that wear gray every day, that work at the Walls unit, to actually do the work. Okay? So in our name, and in your name, because you're a Texan, I guess, we don't want those people doing anything that's not appropriate. You know, you walk it, you go to an execution and you got, you know, both sides that are for and against, you know, on either side of the avenue, Hayden. And then when you walk in around 5:30, you're greeted with broad grins. And then when you walk out, you can sense the pall of despair and darkness. So our men and women in Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and I can say this because I've chaired the committee twice, I've been on the committee ever since I've been in the legislature. They take this seriously and professionally, okay? And we need to take our work thoughtfully as well.
Chair Leach, there were a lot of powerful words about the influence of the Catholic faith on Ms. Lucio and her conversion and what she's been doing in prison. We have, if I remember right, we have the first Roman Catholic governor ever right now. What would you say to him about this case, what he needs to know, and how he should search his faith about it?
So I've communicated with the governor's office in no uncertain terms about my reservations and my concerns about this case and others. They have not only heard from me, they're hearing from the 5 folks behind me, and they're about to hear from what very likely could end up being a supermajority of the Texas House of Representatives. We have the votes right now to pass this bill in the House. So I know the governor, and I believe that the governor cares deeply about innocent life. The governor, maybe more so than most Texans, knows our system of justice in Texas, having served as a Supreme Court justice and then Attorney General prosecuting these cases, and now as our governor. And so I believe very strongly that the governor knows the right thing to do. In many cases, the governor has done the right thing in standing up for innocent life, and it would be my hope that he will do the right thing here as well. And I have no reason to believe that he won't.
Any feedback from his office? That you said that they've heard from y'all, but have you heard back?
We are redirecting our attention and devoting 110% of our attention from the governor's office right now to the Board of Pardons and Paroles. That's where That's where the focus and the attention needs to be put, and that's what we're doing at this time.
Is that no?
Say it
Is
again.
that a no? You have not heard back from him
Oh, I've talked to him for sure.
about?
Not the governor himself, but the governor's office, yes. Yes. And they are, as they always do, doing their due diligence and asking the tough questions, doing exactly what each of us are doing. But right now, our collective efforts in communicating with the decision makers is aimed at the Board of Pardons and Paroles.
So the Board of Pardons and Paroles is generally, pardons and paroles, remorse, mercy, and this case is very much a case, as was the Rodney Reed when you requested that, a question of doubt in her guilt.
Mm-hmm.
How do you all see that playing out with the board in questioning guilt versus remorse?
Well, I don't, let me just mention this and then I want to stop talking. I'm not here opining on the innocence of Melissa Lucio. Okay, I am not the fact finder in this case. And I believe that there is a mountain of evidence that would call into question her guilt. And I believe that the system of justice failed her gravely. And the trial is one of the most troubling trials I've ever seen. But we are not opining on or declaring her innocence. We're simply asking for either a commutation or a pause, a reprieve at the very least, understanding that any Texan executed by the state is executed on our watch. And as a policymaker and a guy that has a voice just like they do, just like you do, to stand here or to sit where you're sitting, we got to use that voice to fight and to stand up for innocent life, and that's what we're doing. And that's what we're asking the governor and the Board of Pardons and Paroles to do. All right, I'm done. Y'all talk.
Well, look, thank you for that question. Very good question. First of all, the reason we have the system that we have is because we had several governors ago, maybe about a century ago, that were probably, doing some things in back rooms or allegedly, selling pardons and clemency. So we have the situation, we have the process that we have now. So I know that the governor's staff, they, just as I do, all the executions, because I'm on the committee, I've served as chair twice, all the execution dates are in my phone. I read the documents involved because I know there'll probably be questions with some, not all, but a very few. So I know they're doing the same thing. They're doing their due diligence. The BPP, as you stated, they will do their work and they will be respectful of the judicial process and the filings that her attorneys have done on her behalf to see how they are exhausted before they make their decision. And then they'll make a recommendation to the governor. So we have the system that we have, and it is a human system, as my friend back here stated. But, this is a very interesting situation. Jolie, right? It's a very, very situation. I mean, this lady is a death sentence, and the husband in the same household is a 4-year sentence. Okay, so I think all of that is going to be looked at in the appropriate ways, and we'll see where we're at in about 16 days.
I could just
Yes, sir.
one note. It is the role of the Board of Pardons and Paroles to listen to the family as well and to take into account victim impact statements. And all of the brothers, this is a very large family. If you've been following the case, all of the brothers and sisters have asked the Board of Pardons and Paroles not to kill their mother. And that's powerful, and that is mercy, and that is their role. So while we may have questions about the fairness of the trial initially, there are no questions from the family about their wanting to see their mother live. Regardless of questions of innocence or guilt, let's put those aside for purposes of your question on the pardons and paroles. Victim impact statements and the people who are alive to tell Mariah's story and to advocate for Mariah are all saying, do not kill Melissa. And that's the most important thing.
Do we have any other questions? I know that Chairman Lucio can answer any questions for Spanish language media. Melissa Lucio being the first Latina sentenced to death in the state of Texas, we want to be mindful of speaking obviously the Spanish language community as well.
Sí, si hay medios de comunicación de habla hispana, estamos aquí para contestar sus preguntas. Nada más decir, este caso es especial porque Melissa Lucio es la única hispana, latina, que ha sido sentenciada a la pena de muerte. Estamos intentando evitar que ocurra la ejecución de Melissa Lucio y estamos abogando para su familia, que no quiere que su madre sea matada por el Estado, y también abogando por la justicia. Así es que si hay preguntas, aquí dominamos los idiomas por lo menos y le podemos responder. Gracias.
If I could say one, I agree completely, Rafael. If I could say one other thing in closing, again, I want to thank my colleagues and those who've signed on. And just as I've been standing here, there's been 6 additional Republican state representatives who've texted me asking to sign on to the letter. So we're up close to 90, and I imagine, Joe, you've probably gotten some too. And we welcome that. We're going to ask legislators to, by 5 o'clock today, if they're willing to sign on, and then we'll release that letter and send it over today. My final words, I want to speak to the faith community. I'm very, very grateful for the Texas Conference of Catholic Bishops for speaking out on this. To those faith leaders out there, to those pastors who are paying attention to this case, I want to ask you to think deeply as well. Please don't bury your head in the sand on this. Speak out for innocent life. The same people who crowd this building, and we welcome them to do so. When we consider pro-life legislation, when we've considered bills over the years, the same people who show up and flood and express their support for those bills, I would urge you and beg you to speak out on this issue as well, because the life of a fellow Texan who very likely could be innocent is hanging in the balance. And so with that, if there's no further questions, we'll conclude the press conference, and we're happy to take your questions in private conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking with us here on KXAN Live. Will Dupree coming back to you in the KXAN Live studio. We just heard there from 6 state representatives, both Republicans and Democrats, announcing that at least 90 state representatives have joined onto a letter asking for clemency from the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles regarding the execution of Melissa Lucio, which is set for next month on April 27th. They questioned they questioned the capital murder conviction and if she's guilty in the death of her 2-year-old daughter, Mariah. Melissa Lucio's attorneys filed a application for clemency earlier this week, saying that they have new evidence that shows that 2-year-old Mariah's death is accidental and not murder. Again, we are still waiting to see what the Board of Pardons and Paroles will decide in this case, and the state legislators are hoping to be able to influence that decision in some way by sending this letter. And you heard there from Representative Jeff Leach, a Republican, asking the faith community to kind of step in and make their voices known in this particular case too. We had more information about Melissa Lucio's case available on our website right now. If you'd like to read a little bit more about that, it's at kxan.com. You can also access it on your smartphone if you have the KXAN News app downloaded. Please do so if you haven't done so already. Thank you all again for watching here this morning. We will be back throughout the day with other updates, so we hope to see you then. I'm Will Dupree in the KXAN Live studio. Please, everybody, stay safe out there and take care.